See, when you start to really when you really start to become enlightened, when you really start to see things as they are, you begin to recognize what's happening. And what's happening when you're meditating is no different than a caterpillar turning into a butterfly. It's no different than an egg hatching and a chick being born. The egg hatching and the chick being born is not a function of the chick making it happen. The caterpillar turning into a butterfly is not a function of the caterpillar making it happen. And your meditating is not a function of your making your awakening happen. It appears to be the case in the beginning, because the trance is still in effect, that you consider yourself to be interested in meditation. You consider yourself to be seeking some experience called enlightenment. You consider yourself to be somebody who's interested in practicing meditation. But if you understand what's really going on, you have nothing to do with it. Going back to the idea of there's no doer, you have nothing to do with it, right? God in the form of you has decided to hatch an egg. God in the form of you has decided for you to become a caterpillar turning into a butterfly, decided for you to transform and transcend the illusion of being a person in a body. And you had nothing to do with it. You had no say-so about it, right? And so when you begin to accept this and you begin to pay attention and see that this is the case, right? You begin to appreciate the blessing that has come upon you, that you have been an expression of God that is awakening from the dream. You're an expression of God. You're God hatching itself as an egg. You're God waking up from the illusion that you've been in, right? And the more that you accept that this is the case, the less resistance there will be to the process. When you're meditating, the more time you spend not thinking, because thinking is the obscuration, right? When thinking happens, it's like the channel changes, right? And you're in the channel of being a person, right? And when you're in the channel of being the person, the awareness doesn't exist, right? When you're in that channel, the awareness doesn't exist. And so up until a certain point in your life, you've been living in a one-channel life. You begin to meditate, and the possibility of another channel, it's actually more than just another channel. The possibility of the channel of all channels exists. However, when you're meditating, you're practicing being aware of the breath and being aware of the body and being aware of awareness itself is allowing you to change the channel to the channel of awareness instead of the channel of being the person. And when you're in that changed channel of awareness, wisdom downloads. When you're in that channel of awareness, wisdom downloads. So as you continue to practice meditation, what you'll begin to notice is things that you heard me say that made no sense to you. As time passes, you begin to see what I'm talking about, because wisdom downloads. Your eyes begin to open. The trance begins to break up because you're spending some time in the awareness and out of the programming, right? And as you understand this, and as the wisdom downloads, you're beginning to take on the brain of God. You're beginning to take on the awareness of God, so it begins to have its way, meaning that you begin to become more interested in meditation. You begin to become interested in doing things like I did for the last 7 days, which the normal person would say, you're crazy, right? But for me and for you, when you get to a point in the process that's happening to you, it doesn't occur to be crazy anymore. It occurs to be going to get a drink of water when you're thirsty. It occurs to be going to get more of the possibility of experiencing your life as a blessing, experiencing your life as a gift, experiencing the possibility of eternity, experiencing the possibility of being in the world as it is. They say samsara is nirvana, is a saying in Buddhist teachings, and samsara is the world, the typical world of misery that we all commonly experience, and they say that world is nirvana. That same world is the kingdom of heaven on earth. The same world. It's not different. You're not going anywhere. Nothing's going to change, right? But your perception of it, you will be seeing it as it is. We often say the word vipassana means as it is. When you develop your eyes, when you begin to become a seer through the process of meditation, you begin to awaken and see things as they are. Well, what does that mean? Well, you begin to see that you're not a physical body. That's seeing things as they are. You begin to see that time isn't real. That's seeing things as they are. Right? You begin to see that the consciousness that you are is the same consciousness that all humanity shares. That's seeing things as they are. Right? That's a whole different view. And when you see with this completely different view, you can be in the same world. Nothing's changed. And the experience and the perception of that world will be completely different. If you are completely convinced and you completely surrender to the idea that there's no doership, that there's no doer, that thy will be done, that God's will is, or the consciousness as the source is the source of all that's happening all the time, not you. If you're living in a world that gives you to live in, you're living in a world of peace. You're living in a world where you can relax and enjoy the show. You don't have to understand the purpose of the author. You don't have to understand what God's up to here, right? The character in a novel can't understand what the author of the book wrote, right? You can't, right? That's not for us to understand, right? We're an expression of God, not God, right? We are, the physical body is a piece of meat. That's it's animated by the vital force. It's animated by this force that allows for movement to occur. It's put into a condition in which it generates the idea that there's time and space, and it generates the illusion of a world that appears to be real. All of this starts to gradually become obvious. You first hear it conceptually. And as a person, you're interested in it conceptually, right? I mean, that's how you got here. That's why you're interested in this, right? Because the person thinks that they're going to get something, right? The person thinks that, this will be a way out of my stress. This will be a way out of my suffering, right? But as you continue, and there's nothing wrong with that, because you're still more in the trance than not, right? But God's still doing God's work. The source, the consciousness is still doing what it's doing. You have nothing to do with it. It still seems to you that you do because you're still enough in the trance that it appears to be the case, right? But as time passes, and as this begins to have its way with you, gradually you begin to come out of the trance, and that which you would never think of doing, like going away for 7 days and meditating 8 hours a day, and participating in an intense program like that, becomes appealing all of a sudden. It's amazing. It's interesting. I remember when I went to my second 10-day Vipassana training, after having gone to the first one and suffered through physical pain most of the time, I remember the voice in my head said when I left that training, I'll never do this again. What was I thinking, right? A couple of years later, I'm sitting in front of my computer and I hear the chanting from that training in my mind. And that's interesting. Why am I thinking about that? And then I thought, I was really I really started to enjoy listening to that chanting when I was there. Let me check out the website to see if they have a recording of it on the computer. So I go and check it out. Yes, there's a recording of it. I start playing the chanting on my computer. And all of a sudden I'm feeling, wow, that really is something is affecting me when I listen to that, right? And I happened to be on the website for the 10-day training, right? So I wonder if they have available trainings coming up. Oh, look, they do. Oh, well, I don't know. I don't think I should. I mean, I told myself I'll never do this again. And then I thought, I'll just put my name in. It's already full, so I'll put my name in, and then they'll tell me there's no room, and then I can forget this whole thing and go on my life. Right? The next day I get an email saying, oh, by the way, somebody's not coming. You can come. Thy will be done. See?
But you still had to choose to go, though, right?
Seemingly so. You see? Seemingly so. Right? But as I reflect on it the way I'm telling you about it now,
We didn't hear what she
Oh,
said.
that he chose to go, though.
yeah, she's saying, but I still chose to go.
Go or not go.
Yeah, and I said, seemingly so. But as I sit here and reflect back on it, it's evident to me that I had no choice at all. One thing after another happened, and I was surprised myself at what I was doing. Why would I do this again? This is crazy. And when I told my wife, she said, what are you, nuts? She was not happy about it. She was not happy about it. She didn't want me, she was actually pissed off that I was going to go, right? But even though she was pissed off, somehow I felt so that didn't matter. It just didn't matter. It didn't matter. And so I went, and when I got there, after having been there last time and experienced excruciating physical pain most of the time, I figured, well, this is proof beyond any doubt that I am definitely a masochist. I might as well just go see somebody and start having them whip me because I must love this pain, right? And so I go in there and I sit and I begin to do the meditation. And for about the first 10 or 15 minutes, I'm sitting there thinking, okay, the pain's going to start. And the pain started a little. And then I just relaxed and figured, okay, what am I going to do? I'm here. You know, if this is going to be painful. And then the pain disappeared. That's what happens when you surrender. Not just...
Thy will be done for your wife that she be pissed off.
Yes.
That was her
Yes.
karma?
Yeah.
Or whatever?
Nothing is outside of thy will be done. Nothing is outside of it. Nothing is outside of it.
So it was a programmed thing that she was going to be pissed off and unhappy.
It wasn't programmed. It was simply the... Now, I'll say the next thing since you're having so much trouble with thy will be done. The other part of the story is everything is absolutely predetermined. Absolutely predetermined. That's as hard to get as thy will be done, right? But if you study it, and if you listen to the teachers that explain the concept of predetermination, you can begin to get it. It starts to sink in. It starts to reveal itself to you. And you begin to see that the only thing that allows us to see things the way we see them is the idea that time is real. Time has us see things as if there was something that happened before and after what's happening now. Time allows us to see things that way. Take time away. Now what? If you take time away, right? And this is, by the way, what the quantum physicists say is true too now. If you take time away because time doesn't really exist, right? Then everything that is happening at the same time. And the way it's talked about in some of these teachings, it's like if you had a wall that was like 50 miles long, right? And on that wall was everything that was happening, right? Right? And it's like you're walking along the wall, seeing what's there. It's already there. You're moving along the wall, seeing what's there, but you think you're standing still and it's moving. Do you understand? That's one way to understand how things are already there that you're seeing. You see, you have to. The brain is so conditioned to believe in these illusions that I can say to you time doesn't exist, right? But it doesn't sink in. It really doesn't sink in. Because if time doesn't exist, what does that then mean? It means that everything must be happening at the same time if there's no time. And the physicists are saying that that's actually the case. Yeah, I understand. I understand that from your point of view, you see? From the point of view of the dreamer in the dream, it appears that the dream is real, doesn't it? Yes. Yeah, but when you wake up, you realize it's a dream. And if it's a dream, it's not real. And if it's a dream and it's not real, then you can begin to see what is real. It's as hard to get as the idea of no free will, because again, it is so revolutionary and counterintuitive and everything, you know. Your brain just can't wrap yourself, you know. It takes time, no pun intended, it takes time to grasp this, and you have to really study it, and you really have to contemplate it. One way to think about this is if you think about a movie, right? When you go to the movies, that whole movie is already done, right? But when you're watching the movie, you're watching it as if it's happening now. But the end of the movie is already done, right? It's exactly the same thing. You are one in essence with God, but God split himself into 8 billion pieces to express himself. You see, the idea of being no doer falls out of, if you can accept the idea that you're not a person, right? That you're not your body and that you're not the conditioning personality, right? If there's no person, how can there be a doer? It falls right out of that. How can there be a doer if there's no person, right? But even though you can understand there's no person, to take it to the next level that there's no doer, your brain starts to really resist. The ego starts to really resist that, because if you get that, the ego's done. The ego's done. That doesn't mean the ego dies. It means you're just not, you're not the ego. That's an important thing. A lot of people think you have to kill the ego. No, you can't kill the ego. That's ridiculous. But you can stop being the ego, and then the ego becomes your worker instead of your master. And you can train your mind so your mind becomes your worker instead of your master. Because wisdom is direct insight, and that is downloaded. That comes when you're not thinking. Like Einstein said, I didn't come up with the theory of relativity, it came to me, right? And when you see for yourself the things that I'm sharing with you conceptually, when you see that for yourself, that's wisdom. That's no longer conceptual understanding. You're seeing it now. And when you see it, that's direct wisdom, that's direct seeing, that's direct awareness making contact with reality. And that's different than knowing anything or thinking about anything. A guy who's driving a race car at 250 miles an hour is not thinking about driving the race car. That proves it's possible not to think and to do something that intense and that dangerous. And he learns that if I think, I'm going to die. You cannot think and drive a car at 250 miles an hour. That's an extreme example, but the example proves the point. You don't have to think to do the things that you do most of the time too. And it's a good thing, because most of the thinking you do is crazy bullshit that has nothing to do with what you have to do, isn't it? Most of the thinking you do is crazy bullshit that has nothing to do with what you have to do. What you have to do, what you have to think to do the things that you need to do to function every day is about 10% of your brain power. Is about 10% of your thought activity. The rest of it's crazy shit. That's right. Your brain learns to drive your car, right? So you could sit there and be miserable while you're driving. Yeah, your brain learns to drive your car so you could sit there and be miserable in your car. Yeah, be mad at the guy in front of you, worry about what's going to happen today, dread yesterday, you know, all the neurotic, crazy shit that people do. Human beings are neurotic. All of humanity is neurotic. But because all of humanity is neurotic, they all agree that's normal, right? And if we all agree that's normal, then we're not neurotic. And then we'll point out the ones who are neurotic, right? And then get them on medication and have them be the sick ones and we're the healthy ones. But that's not the case. Almost all of humanity is neurotic. What do I mean by neurotic? Almost all of humanity is living totally deluded about who they are and what is real, and constantly living in a conversation in their mind about reality instead of living in reality. And that's a negative, fear-based conversation. And they're suffering. One of the ways that your personality keeps you stuck is it splits into being the cop and the robber. You'll go to open the refrigerator and you'll see the chocolate cake, and the voice in your head will say, go ahead. Same thing. You open the refrigerator, the voice in your head says, that chocolate cake, you gotta just taste it. Go ahead, you can do that. So you go ahead and you taste the chocolate cake, and right after you put it in your mouth, the same voice says, you shouldn't have done that. The voice is an interpretation of everything. To be aware doesn't require thinking. To be aware is simply a matter of being present to what's happening. And then, you know, of course, when you take this all the way around, when you complete the circle, you come back to you are your body. Why? Because the ultimate truth is consciousness is all there is, which means that everything that is consciousness. But we can't go there yet. First, you have to get what you're not, and then you come back around and complete the circle to realize that you're everything. So now that you're everything, have a good evening.